বৰঠাকুৰ IS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা।
Welcome to the Hindu analysis for 22nd July 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. Now, 10 p.m.'s WHO chief's staffer Telegram founder targeted. Now, the Pegasus saga seems to be unending in the sense that the initial thought was many activists, many reporters, journalists around the world were targeted. Now we are getting information particularly that world leaders might also be targeted by the Pegasus software. See, remember, we don't know who did it, we don't know why they did it, and recently the Amnesty International, which was the source of the list which contained the phone numbers that these newspapers are quoting, came out recently and said that we didn't explicitly say that the list came from NSO. Remember, the first claim was that NSO was the source of the leak for this particular list containing phone numbers of individuals who were specifically targeted through Pegasus software. Now, International Amnesty or Amnesty International came out and said that we never said NSO was the company that was doing it. It was the newspapers that started saying that NSO was the company. That is one thing. Second thing, in regards to India, we don't know whether the government did it or not. Who did it? The government has clearly said that we haven't carried out any kinds of surveillance. To my knowledge, it has been very vague in this in their answers to these questions in the parliament. The parliament is up in roar regarding this Pegasus issue. Yesterday we discussed how the government of India can tackle this issue by initiating a joint parliamentary committee or an investigation by a senior Supreme Court judge or a bench or a group, an independent jury investigating the claims, and we discussed how it is a threat to democracy. Now we are looking at the news that prime ministers, presidents of countries including France, when their numbers, their personal numbers that they use for daily communication was found in one of the lists that the newspapers are publishing. Now, one thing that we know for a fact that France has already initiated an investigation into these claims. Their court is actually considering a case right now in their Supreme Court, higher courts right now in regards to the Pegasus spyware leak. Again, in India, the situation is still very much active in the sense that we don't know who did it or why they did it, and we don't have the clarity as to how many numbers were actually targeted. So as far as the Indian situation is concerned, we have little much information to discuss, but nonetheless, this is again a critical juncture, and we have to wait for more information to be made public and to get clarity on what are the facts, what are the accusations, and what are false accusations. So we have to wait and see that. I just wanted to update as to what the Amnesty International, which is the source of the list that we are discussing today, says about their origin, their source for information too. Again, they claim that they didn't say NSO was the group. NSO, again to repeat, is the Israeli company that supplies Pegasus spyware software to government organizations. They claim that they only sell the software to government clients and no private clients. This is turning out to be a little bit of an interesting thing. So we'll wait few more days for concrete evidence and information to discuss this issue further. Now moving on to some real issues right now. India must directly engage with Taliban 2.0. So whenever we say or discuss about Afghanistan, Taliban seems to be at the forefront of our discussion. But remember, for every argument there are two sides. So in regards to India's engagement with Taliban, there are also two sides or two voices coming from experts. One group of experts are saying that India shouldn't engage with the Taliban irrespective of what the ground situation is, because it would undermine the Afghan government and it would undermine their trust in us. The second group of experts are arguing that, including within government also, that India must directly engage with the Taliban, and it is in our best interest to engage with the Taliban directly irrespective of how the Afghan government feels, because contrary to what some may believe, Taliban is here to stay and they have a huge say in what goes in the country or what goes out of the country. Now, with that in mind, let us study the second set of argument, that is, India must engage with Taliban, and understand from that perspective why that grouping, particularly this author or editorial of this author, is saying why should India engage with Taliban and why it is advantageous and disadvantageous for India. Particularly advantages if they engage with Taliban and disadvantages if they don't engage with Taliban. Now we have to agree that India's Afghan policy is at a major crossroad. Now, for our own national interest's sake, we must begin open talks with the Taliban before it is too late. That is what the author says here. See, whatever the negotiations that we have been supposedly having with Taliban are closed door negotiations and back channel talks. We haven't never confirmed that we actually engaged with Taliban directly. See, but we have been engaging with Taliban on a back channel basis and a closed door basis, meaning we were having back channel negotiations. We never said that we directly are engaging with Taliban. Now the author says that talk to the Taliban option is indeed the best of many less than perfect options available to India right now. From one point of view, that is absolutely true. India's options are shrinking in Afghanistan on a day-by-day basis. Now, one thing that we have observed in the past few years is, particularly in the last 1 year, since the murmurs of American withdrawal from Afghanistan began, India has been steadily abandoning its puritanical policy towards the Taliban over the past few years. Remember, when we were discussing in earlier editorials few classes back, we also discussed stating that India must try to differentiate between good Taliban and bad Taliban, and India cannot, for its own sake, club entire Taliban grouping as a bad Taliban. So, when you are in such tricky spots, India must be mature enough to identify which sections of the Taliban are good and which sections of the Taliban are bad, instead of branding the entire Taliban as bad Taliban. That would be advantageous. And the author also suggests that India has also shifted its moral thought or moral paradigm in that direction, meaning we are also abandoning our puritanical policy, meaning we will never engage with Taliban. That policy is gone out of the window because of the current ground situation in Afghanistan. Now, as I said earlier, reports have been coming out here and there stating that India had started out reaching out to Taliban, but albeit indirectly, not directly. Now, the author suggests that open dialogue with Taliban should no longer be a taboo, meaning we shouldn't be afraid to have an open channel, open dialogue with Taliban, because it is our strategic necessity. Now, the author also suggests that if India chooses to engage with Taliban, the primary fear is that Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani this act of New Delhi or India choosing to engage Taliban openly and directly might force or nudge Ashraf Ghani, who has been a consistent ally to India and India's interest in Afghanistan, may be forced to look at or towards China. So that is one policy that we have to be very aware of. We cannot discount the fact that our actions of directly engaging with Taliban might force the Afghan government to move closer towards China, which is again a detrimental to our own interest in that region. Now, the second question or the second risk that the author points out into why India is not engaging with Taliban directly is we don't know who to talk with. Taliban is not a monolith organization or a single-phased or a structured organization. With the reports coming out recently, there are 2 or 3 factions in the Taliban itself where they have their own agendas to pursue and own agendas to ascertain. That is why we discussed earlier stating that there are 2 groups of Taliban right now. There is a lot of infighting. One is against Pakistan, one is being controlled by Pakistan, and they are fighting for supremacy in the group itself. So these kinds of infighting and these kinds of lack of structural form in the Taliban grouping itself makes India or the task to engage with Taliban or talk with Taliban, very tricky a very tricky problem or a tricky situation. We don't know who to talk with. What we are engaging or whom we are engaging with is, at one side of it, the political leadership. The second side of it is strong Taliban leaders who are willing to force their own path in the group itself. So we are engaging with multiple parties, but we are not engaging with we don't know who to engage with, because the leadership doesn't exist as any other political party like in other countries. Now, moving on. As far as the outfit itself, the third reason that the author gives is the outfit itself has changed a lot today. They say that they have changed a lot today, but in reality, we don't know whether they changed or not. See, Pakistan and China have been saying that Taliban is not the Taliban that was 20 years ago. Taliban is more modernized. Taliban is more liberal in the sense. But as soon as they took control of certain districts in northern province, the Taliban leadership gave out a calling or a community call to all the elders in the villages to give Taliban a list of women aged between 15 and 42. So again, that was seems to that call was given to make sure that their fighters get married to women who are aged between 15 and 42. Again, that is the same tactic that Taliban did 20 years ago. Nothing has changed. But what Pakistan and China are saying, that the Taliban themselves are saying that they are not the organization or outfit that they were 20 years ago, and they are more modern and they are more liberal. But their actions seems to be contrary to what they claim. There is lack of clarity about what are the real intentions of Taliban if and when they get power in Kabul. We don't know what their end goal is. They are not clearly stating that we want to establish such and such rule when they ascend to power in Kabul. The fourth point is the possibility of Pakistan acting out against India in Kashmir if India were to establish deeper links with Taliban. The fourth option that the author suggests why India is skeptical of or is not willing to have an open dialogue with Taliban is Pakistan. If India starts engaging with Taliban or establish a deeper level link with Taliban itself, Pakistan might act out in Kashmir and make things difficult for India in Kashmir. That is one worry India has to consider before engaging with Taliban in an open and free fashion. Now, the fifth point is, one way or the other, it has to be agreed that Taliban is going to play an important political role in Afghanistan. They are going to have a say in what happens in Afghanistan. Now, as of now, the ground reality is that large number of international players in the international community are recognizing or in the process of recognizing. Some are in the process of negotiating. Some have initiated negotiations to do business with Taliban. Regional players such as Uzbekistan, Tajikistan have clearly know what they are going to get from Taliban, and they have started negotiating business deals with Taliban. Remember, at this point, Taliban controls all the major crossings, border crossings, and the bridges that America built between Tajikistan and Afghanistan, Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. At this point, they control the trade routes from Afghanistan into other countries. That is why these countries are forced to do business with Taliban. At the same time, Taliban is also looking for regional and global partners for recognition and legitimacy. When we were discussing Taliban in earlier classes, I told you that Taliban is excited or is happy to engage with India because the moment Indian state engages with Taliban in an open way, their legitimacy goes up, right? Any international country that negotiates with Taliban means that they are officially recognized by that country, so they become a legitimized force. So they become till now they are branded of terrorists, but as soon as countries democratically elected, democratic countries start engaging with Taliban, they become a legitimate force. That is why they were hankering for India or hankering to engage with India either directly or indirectly, because the moment India chooses to engage in the regional sphere, their IP goes up, so their price goes up. So that, in the sense that their value goes up. So they are also looking for legitimacy. They are not happy that they are still dependent on Pakistan to get that legitimacy, and India at this point must not let Pakistan deep state to exclusively deal with Taliban, because that is again detrimental to our own regional security and internal security. That said, the Taliban 2.0, or the second iteration of the same Taliban with different name but the same Taliban, is willing to develop its own agency and willing to develop its own sovereign claims by calling into question the legitimacy of Durand Line, which separates Pakistan and Afghanistan. This has already happened. There was this section of Pakistan which actually controls a certain territory bordering Pakistan right now, that has questioned the legitimacy of Durand Line itself. Pakistan is well aware of it, and Pakistan is also afraid of Taliban gaining momentum and their own and being standing up on their own foot, because once they gain their own momentum, they gain their own legitimacy, and they gain their independence, and they are no longer dependent on Pakistan deep state for identification or legitimacy. The moment that happens, there is no stopping the Taliban from questioning the Durand Line, which separates Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, that is why they have been very calculated in terms of engaging with Taliban also. Remember, Pakistan has the other problem of Tehreek-e-Taliban, which is an active Taliban organization in Pakistan that is waging a war against the Pakistani state. Recently, they ambushed 15 to 20 soldiers who were conducting a combing operation in the northwest frontier of Pakistan. Again, Pakistan has its own issue with Taliban, and they are also well aware of what would entail if Taliban gets full-scale legitimacy from international organizations and international groups. So, Pakistan also has its own set of advantages and disadvantages, and that is why they always strive to have that much of control over Taliban. But at this point of time, Taliban is no longer the organization in that sense that it was 20 years ago, and now it has more international recognition and it is more international savvy. Look at the way that they are engaging with international press and international organizations and countries. They have their own press secretaries, they have their own external affairs department. They are engaging with international news outlets, and they are giving active interviews, putting out their story. So, Pakistan is also well aware of its own misgivings in regards to Taliban. That is why we have to engage and utilize that mistrust between Taliban and Pakistan and use it and turn it for our own advantage. Now let us look at what is the issue with India withdrawing from Afghanistan. Now we have already spent over $3 billion in terms of infrastructure in Afghanistan. Remember, this is not an investment. We didn't invest in Afghanistan expecting returns. We kind of invest, our support was to improve their infrastructure and their transportation system, right? We built a road, we built a dam, whatever the infrastructure that we built for them, we built them in terms of help, not in terms of investment. That is the distinction that we have to be very clear. Investment means we are expecting something in return. In Afghanistan, what we are expecting from those investments is not monetary, it is more a strategic one. So we have spent, the author suggests that it makes neither strategic nor economic sense to withdraw from Afghanistan after spending over $3 billion. But remember, Indian government is also considering the option of pulling out from Afghanistan if Taliban gains control of Kabul, because it's a moral dilemma for them, because we have deep gash memories with the the Air India flight hijack in Kandahar and the subsequent attacks on Indian populace and recent killings of Indian journalists and so on and so forth. But the author suggests that India's outreach to Taliban should have started years ago. We are late to the party. In the sense, I'm being ironic here, India should have reached out to Taliban long back ago when Taliban had less suitors to negotiate with. Remember, few years back, Taliban was a banned outfit, Taliban was a terrorist outfit, Taliban, nobody was willing except Pakistan and China, nobody was willing to talk with Russia. Okay, so except those three countries, nobody was willing to talk to Taliban. Now, regional countries, international organizations, and countries and international groupings are willing to engage with Taliban to find a political solution in Afghanistan. Now they have many suitors and many choices to engage with. So India is at that disadvantageous position because Taliban can choose to engage with us or not choose to engage with us. They might not lose anything in that directive. Now, why India, according to the Sadhav, why India is choosing to engage with Taliban at this point of time is India is currently strategically boxed in the region. Remember, China has been carrying out, yesterday also we discussed with the poverty alleviation and convention with the 6 countries, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, those countries that China created a new grouping which excluded India, Maldives and Bhutan. We also said that China is developing this minus India policy or minus India doctrine where they are trying to wean away our neighbors from our influence or our circle of influence. The reality is our relationship with our neighborhood countries have deteriorated to a significant extent that it is actually impacting our foreign policy and our for regional security also. We are strategically boxed in the region and we are engaging with them, but we don't trust them enough to engage with them in a comprehensive and a complete way. China has been successfully able to box us in our own backyard by turning our neighbors into hostile entities. They have been successful in doing that. Now we are on the track to recover on the recovery path, but because of COVID-19, that path became much harder than what it was 2 years back. Now, one way India can come out of this strategical box is by opening the northwestern frontier. Northwestern frontier means we are trying to open up a channel in northwestern region. That is why we are conducting back channel negotiations with Pakistan, which resulted in the February ceasefire, which is still in place, and now we are engaging with albeit back channel negotiations with the Taliban also, so that we have one way out of this strategical box that we are in right now. What India currently dominates has some resemblance of dominance is the Indian Ocean region. Apart from that, in the Nepal area, in the Myanmar area, in the Bangladesh area, in Pakistan also we are bordered. On the top we are bordered by the Chinese on one side, on the Pakistanis on the other side. Whatever the link that we had with the upper regions of our neighbors was also taken by the Aksai Chinting and the Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So we are trying to break the mold that we are being forced into by the Chinese, and these kinds of strategies which India has already adopted and began with are the reason that why we have been engaging with Pakistan through back channel negotiations, though diplomatic, and Taliban through closed door meetings and back channel negotiations. That is why we wanted to come out of this strategical box that we are in right now. That is why we are engaging with these parties to open up the congested northwestern frontier in our region. So that is the issue with Afghanistan and why India should and must engage with Taliban in Afghanistan according to this author. Moving on to the next article, India signed 26 pacts to fight drug menace. Now India has signed 26 bilateral pacts, 15 memorandum of understandings and 2 agreements on security cooperation with different countries to combat illicit trafficking of narcotics, drugs, psychotropic substances and chemical precursors, and this was according to a Home Affairs reply in Lok Sabha. Right? India has currently 26 bilateral agreements, 15 memorandum of understanding, and two security agreements, two agreements on security cooperation to fight against drug menace. Now, we know for a fact that in certain states in India, drug abuse is a huge problem. Particularly in Punjab, there has been a documented case of drug abuses and drug overdose deaths and drug abuse, in the sense that it is actually impacting the fabric of society in those states. So, India, in its fight against drug trafficking and drug menace, through the Narcotic Control Bureau, has been coordinating with various international organizations for sharing information, sharing intelligence, and this is to combat transnational drug trafficking. This includes the SARC Drug Offense Monitoring Desk. We are engaging with Brazil, Russia, China. So, to coordinate among various central and state agencies that are fighting narcotics in India, the Narco Coordination Center (NCORD) was set up in 2016 by Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this was done to ensure that every state and central agency must coordinate together in fighting the drug menace in India and drug trafficking in India. The setting up of NCORD system in place has ensured better cooperation between state level agencies and central level agencies in their fight against narcotics. This is again a reply to a question in Lok Sabha, and we know for a fact that Indian government has been actively engaging against drug menace and drug trafficking. But at the end of the day, this is still a major problem that doesn't get the coverage it deserves. There are various corners to this issue, but sadly, there isn't a lot that is discussed about drug menace and drug abuse and drug trafficking in India. We need a much more comprehensive approach to drug problem, drug trafficking and drug abuse in India, but this is still a taboo subject in our country. That is the negative aspect of it. But this is a challenge that nobody seems to have an answer for. The American government is suffering from it. The Brazilian government is suffering from it. And this is not only an Indian issue, this is a world issue. So, Indian government engaging with other partners in fight against drug menace is a welcome thing. But at the end of the day, it has to be addressed from the societal aspect also. Now, moving on to the next article. Lightweight anti-tank missile tested by DRDO. So yesterday DRDO successfully tested a new generation of Akash, which is a surface-to-air missile, and the new iteration of this indigenously developed surface-to-air missile Akash has an increased range capacity of around 25 kilometers. Again, this is to boost our capabilities so that we can develop a multi-range response system in our conflicts. Again, subsequently, in the same day, DRDO also tested an indigenously developed low-weight man-portable anti-tank guided missile. On top of Akash being tested, DRDO also tested an indigenously developed ATMG, MP man-pad or man-portable, meaning a individual soldier can carry this guided missile that is that's sole aim is to take out tanks in the battlefield. That is why it is called MP-ATMG or man portable anti-tank ATGM, sorry, ATMG not ATGM, man portable anti-tank guided missile. So as I said, Akash surface to air missile, this version is called Akash NG. It has a range of around 25 kilometers. Moving on to the next article, climate cooperation depends on overall ties, China says. Now, in few days back we discussed how China is coming up with, where we discussed about the national carbon trading market that China launched, where they want to trade carbon with the companies to reach their emission goals. In that article, we discussed how China has brought up its own standards in terms of climate change, emission controls to directly challenge the standards brought in by the US and other developed countries. Now, China came out and said that in a response to the criticism given by the US Special Envoy for Climate Change, John Kerry, where he said that China must do more to climate change, meaning their commitment to peak emissions by 2030 was not sufficient enough to ensure 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming target. China recently said that we are striving to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. So for this statement, Mr. John Kerry, who has been appointed as the special envoy or the special presidential envoy for climate by the United States government, criticized the claim that China's commitment to peak emissions by 2030 is not sufficient. So in response to that criticism, China has said that cooperation with United States on climate change will depend on the overall state of relations between both the countries. Remember, what they are essentially saying is, if you want to talk about climate change, let us solve other issues. See, this is the same track that they adopted with India. India is saying that first let us solve the border issue, then we will discuss trade and other areas of cooperation. What China is saying is, border issue is one aspect of our negotiations. Let it be like that. Let it simmer. We will discuss economy, we will discuss trade, we will discuss other areas of cooperation, to which India is not agreeing. So similarly, they are saying that cooperation with the United States on climate change will depend on overall state relation or state of relations with both the countries. So again, they have their own set of standards, they have their double standard issues. So there are multitude of areas and issues where China and US are fighting with each other, whether it may be the South China Sea, whether it may be the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the coronavirus, the origins of coronavirus, where China recently accused US being the source of the SARS-CoV-2 leak rather than their Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's a lot going, and climate seems to be least of their worries in terms of bilateral ties. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা। বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি।